Thanks very much for being here, for staying with us at the end of what's been a fantastic first day. Very, very enthralling, very challenging too. And it's great to know that you're here. I can't really see you, so I'm just assuming that the hall is totally full and every seat is taken up, because I have a lot of lights in my face. So my name is Florian Westphal. I'm the General Director of MSF Germany. And I also want to welcome our online viewers, actually, whom I can't see either, but I know they're out there. And I want to encourage them to please continue to contribute to the debate, post their questions using the hashtag, so hashtag HCBerlin. So before I do anything else, I would like to introduce our two guests who are here tonight. So first, sitting in the middle is Catrin Nye, and I had to check, it really is Catrin, not Catherine, Catrin. And Catrin is an award-winning investigative journalist working for the BBC. She's also made documentaries. She's a presenter too. She's been intensive, especially covering human rights issues, both in the UK and internationally, but also developed a specialism in coverage of Britain's minority communities. She's won a number of awards. And she lives in London and is from Wales. And in a moment, we will actually see a film she made in Lesbos. And next to her, we have Mardjan, Abidian, who is a cultural mediator for MSF, working in Moria camp in Lesbos. She's a trained anthropologist, daughter of a Dutch mother and an Iranian father, and she works as a Farsi-speaking cultural mediator. She's just in the process of finishing up her second long mission in Lesbos, in Moria, and has therefore really witnessed the European situation, arrival of migrants and refugees since 2015. Apart from that, she has also co-created a mental health program for children and unaccompanied minors, and also works as a health promoter. So in a moment, we'll start off with the film by Catrin, but before doing so, allow me perhaps just to say a few words, because I feel that this final session on Lesbos is really taking us back to the key topic of this Congress, which is human dignity. We know that humanitarian crises, wars, natural disasters, they don't just impact and endanger the physical well-being and safety of millions of people, but they also have a profound impact on people's ability to live a dignified life. But what does human dignity actually mean? And I'm not a philosopher or a theorist, so I can just give you my own take on that. And for me, there are really three aspects of human dignity that matter particularly. The one of them is obviously linked to the ability of the physical environment, to the ability to live a dignified life in terms of having access to shelter, having access to water and sanitation, being able to keep yourself clean, being able to keep yourself fed and healthy. And we all know, more often than not, that unfortunately in humanitarian crises, this is exactly what is missing and what people don't have, because the living conditions very often are terrible. But apart from that, we obviously also have those immaterial aspects of human dignity. It's the feeling of being safe and secure from attack and violence, not just yourself, but also your family. There's that feeling of having the possibility to live together with your loved ones, or at least to be able to know where they are and to be able to be in touch with them. And there's also, to mention something else, perhaps the certainty and at least the belief in a better future that, for example, your children will be able to get an education and will be able to continue their development to hopefully lead a rich and fulfilling life. Finally, I think there's also an aspect of dignity which really concerns your ability as an individual to have an influence on your own future, to be an actor in your own life, to have the chance to understand what you can do to build a better tomorrow for yourself and for your loved ones. To be, in a way, nearly an autonomous architect of your own existence, your own fate, rather than a passive subject of decisions that are taken by someone else, that are taken by unknown and unaccountable authorities. So I briefly visited Moria camp in Lesbos myself, very briefly, in May. But I had the feeling very quickly that Moria is really a place where these three aspects of human dignity are totally and utterly violated. The physical environment for the people who live there is terrible. The people living there are anything but safe. On the contrary, they are regularly and repeatedly exposed to violence. And finally, in terms of their own agency about their own life, they are permanently and repeatedly exposed to and completely incomprehensible, unaccountable, almost Kafkaesque system of administrative regulation, which nobody seems to be able to understand and which nobody really wants to explain either. So I'm really, really pleased that we will be hearing from Catrin and Madeline later on about their observations, their experience of the reality that is Moria. But before we do that, let's have a look at the film. Oh.
The paradise island of Lesvos. Also home to the refugee camp described as the worst on the planet. We have rare access inside Moria camp. So we've been given 45 minutes only to go around the camp. It's horrifically overcrowded.
Please help us, please. For God's sake, help the women.
Plagued by constant fighting. Disease and trauma. Children as young as 10 attempting suicide.
Yes, it's not normal, but that's the problem.
I've got limited time to look inside Moria camp. Access to this place is controlled by the Greek government. And I have their press representative, George Matheou, as an escort.
But you see the problems.
So we've been given 45 minutes only to go around the camp. This is a section for the newest arrivals. There's 7,500 people in here. It has capacity for between 2,000 and 3,000. Conditions are appalling. There are around 70 people per toilet. The sewage system doesn't work properly. Many charities have left this camp in protest at how bad it is.
There are a lot of people.
How long is the wait for food?
About 3 hours. 3 hours?
3 hours?
Yeah.
And what do you
some
get?
Some people, for breakfast, some people come at 3 o'clock, 3 a.m.
In the morning?
Yeah, in the morning. Some of them do not get water because this is our 24 hours water.
Fewer refugees are arriving on the island than previous years, but they're not leaving. As part of the deal between the EU and Turkey, the Greek government is holding people on Lesvos, rather than moving them to the mainland. They can leave the gates of this camp, but are trapped on the island. So George was just telling me that this is a line of tents, all with Afghans in it, who have moved here after all the fights between them and Syrian refugees. Hi. Can I come in?
Yes.
Hi. Hello.
ما بسیار زندگی خوب در افغانستان داشتیم. از خاطر شکای ما تعدید طالبات تعدید میکرد. دخترم اختطاف میشد. از خاطر اختطاف نجا گفته از خاطر جان امنیت جان از آمدیم. این مکتب شخصی میخواند. به خاطر مکتب از طرف مکتب طالبات تعدید میکرد. جان از او در خطر بود. از این در خطر بود. از این خاطر ما خیلی ما آمدیم که بیاد این کشورها یک در آرام شویم. طفل ما آینده طفل ما خوب شود. هر روز اینجا هر شب جنگ است. هر شب اینجا جنگ. افغان عرب جنگ میکنه. سر فامیلیا میان. ما کل چیز ما رو گرفتن میخزیم میبرایم داد بیرون میریم میشنیم.
ما میخوایم درس بخونیم و در اینجا زندگی نمیکنیم. آتن بریم.
We approach the camp's asylum centre, which is closed.
هیچی رقم قانونم. این تمام روز ما اینو تو با جنجالم با جنگل رفتیم ششتم. زندگی ما بیخ برباد شده.
It's closed.
It's almost 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. The schools they're doing nothing.
So this is where you apply for asylum?
Yeah.
Why is it closed?
We don't know. Everybody says different things. We don't know why.
Is there
anything we can do to help the woman?
No. We can't do nothing from first reception. It's a different organization.
How do you cope with seeing this?
We can help the first reception to take quickly the papers. After the asylum, we can do nothing for this.
Do you know when it's going to open again?
I don't know.
This woman's really sick, obviously.
Everybody here.
But aren't people that are supposed to be taken off the island if they're
Everybody is
sick?
vulnerability here because it's refugees.
Inside some shelters, our government representative, George, is confronted about conditions. She said she wants to move to
All the people who came to your country, I believe that they have problem. They are not crazy to come here and waste their time, waste their life. They have problem, and each of them have problem.
And what they expect from us? To take the papers in one day and go in Germany or Holland or the other.
I don't know their expectation, but my expectation, Greek people are good. But this situation, I'm in Moria situation, is worse.
But the Moria is for 2,000 people, and you are at least 7,000.
No.
We don't make this area to stay. We make to come here for 4 days or for 5 days and go inside.
But now everyone's being kept.
But now we can't do nothing for this.
It's been very clear for a long time that people aren't going to be leaving the island. Why haven't conditions been made better?
We have not money for this. You know the situation of Greece, economical of Greece. I want to help, but I can't do nothing because the European Union closed the borders.
Moria camp is now spilling out into the surrounding countryside. So this is known as the olive grove, and it's basically the overspill from Moria. It's where everyone stays that can't fit in there. Conditions are even worse. Oh, and everyone just wants to tell me how bad it is.
Please help us, please. For God's sake, help the women. Help the men, help the child, please. If there is a humanity, please help us. For God's sake, we help all the people. Not me, all the people is in trouble.
Less than half an hour later, and violence erupts. So we've just found out they're evacuating the tent. We've heard some loud shouting. And all the NGOs around here have been alerted to some sort of problem inside, some sort of fight. 2 people have been stabbed and people start evacuating. Hello.
Your cards, where is it?
But we're blocked from going back into film. We try and find out what's going on from Luca, who works for charity MSF.
It's always the same pattern. It starts with a fight. Now was for the food line. 2 people got stabbed, and it's always something between different community, Afghan and Syrian, something like that. It starts in the afternoon, and then it's exploding in the night times. Moria is the worst place I've ever been in my whole life and my whole MSF experience. And I've been working in several countries, war zone. I've been working in refugee camps in Central African republics, in Congo, in the biggest Ebola outbreaks in the West Africa in 2014-15, but I've never seen, ever, the level of suffering we are witnessing here every day.
Even compared to an Ebola outbreak?
Yeah.
Why?
It sounds strange.
We're in
but
Greece.
Yeah, but people, even if affected by Ebola, they still have the hope either to survive or they have the support of their family, their society, their village, their relative. Here, no. Here, the hope is taken away by the system.
The charity MSF refused to operate inside Moria in protester conditions. This clinic is just outside. The children here have skin conditions caused by poor hygiene inside. Respiratory diseases brought on by tear gas fired into the camp by police to quell fights.
همیشه ما آماده هستیم به گریز 24 ساعت ما طفلای ما را به خواب نمیمالیم سرشانی مستقل جنگ میشه حالا فرار میکنیم حالا میبریم یعنی کار ما یعنی نیسته کار ما 24 ساعت در 24 ساعت ما گفته یکم تا از طرف صبح 4 ساعت 5 ساعت 6 ساعت ما در صف نان روز ما تیر میشه بعدش باز میایم خانه باز تا به اولادای ما رسیدگی میکنیم نان چاشت میشه در نان چاشت همگی باز میره دوباره باز اونمو تو نان شو اونمو تو بعد از اینکه شو میشه دیگه باز زد خورد شروع میشه
We had mental health program for children here, and in between our patients we had a 10-year-old child who attempted to suicide inside Moria.
You're having to deal with children as young as 10 attempting suicide.
Yes. And yeah, that's maybe, it sounds really extreme, but it's something we are seeing constantly in Moria.
Is that normal?
No, it's not. It's not normal. It's not normal, but that's the problem. We are reporting this to the public system, to UNHCR, to the Minister of Health. Look, we have children who attempt suicide. Children as young as 10 years old who try to suicide. And there is no child psychiatrist or psychologist on this island. And despite the fact that we push to move these children to Athens as soon as possible, it's not happening. And those children are still here. Some of them are still living inside Moria.
Ali is Kurdish, originally from Afrin in Syria. He and his family are now living in a small, separate refugee camp on the island called Pikpa. It's for vulnerable refugees. He fled Moria after a now notorious fight there in May, largely between Kurdish and Arab men. Men were attacked with iron bars. No one died, but many were injured. Hundreds of Kurds fled Moria after that fight.
والسبب أساسي نحن أول ما دخلنا على موريا يعني هي مفاجأة من العيار الثقيل بموريا دخلنا ولقينا يعني هي موجودة العنصرية موجودة أو الطائفية موجودة إن كانت بين سنة وشيعة إن كان بين أكراد وعرب وأفغان.
Ali says that conflict between rebel groups in Syria has also come into the camp.
هي المشكلة السياسية اللي موجودة بسوريا فانقلبت وكانت موجودة بموريا هي نفس المشكلة إنه جماعة يبكي أو قصد أو جبهة نصرة أو جيش حر أو داعش أو شيء يعني منتقلة لهنيك.
Do you think there are dangerous people in Moria?
مو باعتقادي أكيد قد ما يحكي الواحد اللي ما بيعيشها ما بيعرف مثل الحرب بسوريا على أبشع نسمع بحالات اغتصاب تحرش.
What did you expect when you came here to Europe?
أنا من 3 سنين ضارب حالي بالبحر. أنا البحر غدرني.
What we can ask now, indeed, is to improve the living condition, and the Greek government should do that. Improve living condition, reduce the overcrowdings, provide doctors access to medical care, access to mental health care.
Despite the conditions, the boats keep landing from Turkey.
Hello, hello.
51 of the 53 men, women and children on this boat are from Afghanistan, where dozens have been killed in attacks just this month. They celebrate landing in Europe, landing somewhere at least more safe, but unaware of the new trauma that lies ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Catrin. Seeing this again, I think you were there in August, and obviously in the course of your career, you've probably seen quite a few tough situations for the people whom you were reporting about. Is there anything special about Moria for you?
Yeah, I think there is actually. I often deal, like a lot of people in this room do, with tragedy, with sad circumstances, difficult circumstances, harrowing stories. But there is something about Moria, there was something, and I know there still is, that stays with you. And that was my kind of overwhelming takeaway from spending some time there. Everyone in the camp, around the camp, working there, volunteering there, living there, was incredibly emotional. It's actually not that normal to have so many people break down in tears in a report. And I didn't speak to that many more people than you see. And those who didn't break down were often on the edge of tears, lots of different people that I met. So I think it was a unique kind of chaos, feeling of hopelessness for a lot of people. Yeah, just a very unusual place, and obviously on a paradise Greek island. So that contrast in itself is very unusual and definitely stays with you. I went to, the day this was broadcast, actually, I flew to Jordan, to Zaatari camp. Much bigger, probably on paper would seem like it would be a much more difficult place to report from, to visit. And it was, incredibly organized. There was a sense of community, a sense of order, law and order as well. And that's completely different to Moria.
Now, I think this report really got a lot of attention via social media. It's been viewed many, many times on YouTube, and I think you've also had a lot of reactions from viewers. I'm just wondering, what are people telling you about this? What is it setting off a particular reaction? Is there anything different about that from the kind of reaction you'd usually be getting to your reporting?
It did have a huge reaction that I didn't even anticipate, actually. The day it went out, I remember I was in London and I had someone, before I flew off, I had someone stop me in the street who'd seen it and comment on it. And that's unusual, especially when you're in the middle of Oxford Circus in London and there's just people everywhere. It's not something that usually happens. I think the emotion that people in the report felt, everyone, from Luca to Ali, that I think that came across. I think people watching it felt it. To be honest, I had lots of people say that they found it actually quite difficult to watch. And then I sometimes do feel bad, because I've obviously upset people. But I'm still glad that they saw it, as long as I'm not really, really traumatizing anyone. I had negative responses, as you'd expect, as any report where there's political debate does. But I was genuinely surprised how many people saw it. It was partly planning. I always, when I do a report, I don't do a report every day. I'm a kind of long-form news/documentary journalist, and I do try and make sure that as many people receive it as possible. So one of the things about this report is how many that help people see it is how many versions you're able to do. I mean, this is kind of internal technicalities. I hope it's not boring, but one of the good things about working at the BBC is that you have within the organisation hundreds of platforms. So, you know, the first broadcast can be in radio form on the Today programme, which is on Radio 4 in the UK, which is the programme that it's very well respected. It's kind of agenda setting. It's listened to by politicians. I made sure it was on that in radio form. But before it was on that, in a very conventional media form, I made sure it was on YouTube. I made sure there was a written version of the report. I made sure there was a social version of the report specifically designed for broadcast on Twitter and Facebook. And so I think it was a combination of people genuinely feeling when they watched it, the way, at least a sense of some of the way people I spoke to felt, and also just making sure that in the current media age that it was available in every form someone might try and consume it. And so, you know, a politician who listens to the Today programme gets to listen to it and then maybe goes and watches it somewhere else, but someone who is on Twitter and wouldn't go near a radio also gets to consume it.
Okay, now, Mardjan, the two of you actually met, I think, right? At least briefly while you were filming.
Briefly, very
now,
briefly.
Mardjan, obviously, you have been, you know, living and working in this situation for quite a long time now. I think it's the second stint you've been in Lesbos, and it's been several months, and I know you're supposed to be coming to an end, but I know you're also thinking about maybe continuing. Tell us a little bit, as a cultural mediator, as a health promoter, I mean, tell us a little bit about your day and your work in the camp.
Gosh, I've been on Lesbos on and off since 2015, so I was there before the EU-Turkey deal, and I saw the situation gradually get worse and, well, the direct consequences of this deal. At this moment, I have to give a bit of context to understand what I'm doing now and what we're seeing and facing now every day. MSF, as many of us know, withdrew itself from Moria after the EU-Turkey deal as a statement of disagreement. And we set up a relatively small clinic in Mytilene, the capital of Lesbos, providing different services. And it was there, this is all 2016, that the deterioration of the mental health conditions of people popped up. We were just seeing more and more patients, and we barely could keep up with it. We have been speaking out about it. This led to the opening of a very big mental health clinic we have in Mytilene, where we see, well, it's basically people with severe psychiatric problems who have been on the island for some 2 years. Some of them I know since my first day of my first mission, and with psychosis, with severe PTSD. 70% of our patients are victims of survivors of torture, of sexual violence, and then we set up in the past winter a pediatric clinic. It was originally a part of the E-pool, but we stayed. And yeah, it's just it goes on and on and on. It's deteriorating. So now, how does a day look like? We provide, we're by the entrance of Moria, we have a mobile clinic. We provide primary health care to children. We see about 120 children a day. We have a mental health program for children, and 2 midwives, sexual reproductive health. And the thing is, it's a static situation. You know your patients after a while. You know the residents of the camp, and you see kids coming back with the same complaints over and over and over again, because you treat them either if it's a skin disease or a diarrhea or much more complicated severe diseases, but they go back to the same living conditions. So you start kind of become part of the same trap. That is.
Now, I remember walking through the camp together with you, and the one thing that was really striking is that as soon as we came in there was basically always at least 5 or 6 kids sort of more or less glued to you, and then quite a few adults coming up as well. And it was a very lively kind of conversation. It was pretty clear that these were people you were meeting and seeing pretty much every day, and you're talking to every day. But you know, also for me, obviously, as somebody who doesn't understand Farsi, what's going on in these conversations? What are these people asking you, and what are they effectively, what are they telling you about their own life and their own existence?
A lot, and I have to say it's a burden on your shoulders. If you, okay, basically as a cultural mediator, you not only translate consultations, doesn't matter if it's with MD, a psychologist, psychiatrist, but you're the bridge between the organization and beneficiaries. And so you're also there to listen, to get information, to know what's actually happening in the field. It's often questions of desperation and questions how things work, how the asylum procedure work, where they have to go, where they have to, asking for information, or daily complaints, or life stories, or, so yeah, if I walk around Moria, I see life stories. Yeah.
And it's an unbelievably cramped environment. I mean, I think you probably felt that too, right? It's unfortunately, when I was there, we were not really allowed to take any photos, and I didn't tell Luca at the time, but I did manage to take a couple. It's unbelievably cramped, but it's almost unimaginable that people can live a dignified life in this kind of circumstances, but they do. So how, I mean, you know, how do people really struggle to, in a way, maintain their dignity in these circumstances?
I think it's always the other side of extremes. If you're taken away, unfortunately, this shouldn't happen in Europe. It's right around the corner, but taken away from any kind of basic access to food, access to healthcare, access to mental health care, access to legal aid. As you say, living on top of each other. It's literally 3 families in a room this big. Now also sleeping outside in summer tents, squeezed on top of each other. And you see people lose it completely. I think it's an environment that evokes any kind of extreme behavior. It triggers trauma, it triggers violence, it triggers depression, it evokes diseases. But the other side of it is that you also see the resilience of people, or you see that the person who is psychotic and not even able to get dressed in the morning, that there's always a caretaker coming with him to the clinic, or that there is a single mother with 4 children and she is hospitalized, that there is someone to take care of the other children. And the same is with us, with daily interactions, that there is, I believe, the opposite side of extreme misery is extreme resilience.
Catrin, you mentioned the fact that you were not let back into the camp because of this sudden sort of violent episode. I mean, what did that feel like? Because the violence is something, you know, you hear a lot about, and the people in your report talk about it all the time as well. How violent a place is it? How violent a place does it feel like? Because that's maybe something which we don't always necessarily consider as much as we should do, which is something you just mentioned. It's about law and order. It's about, do people feel safe when they are asleep, basically? Yeah,
I don't think anyone felt safe. I had been sent the video of the fight before I got there and done a lot of calls with people, different organizations on the island, people who'd left, people who'd been there before, to try and figure out what the picture that there was before I got there. And you always wonder if, when you speak to someone in advance of going to somewhere like Moria, and I'm a journalist, so you kind of wonder if they're telling you the very, very worst, and that you'll get there and it'll be a bit calmer, and that will just be, you know, something that happens at the edges. But when I arrived and sat in your clinic, and then went into the camp the next day, it was the first or second thing everyone would talk about, particularly mums and dads. Because one of the first pieces of video, I couldn't even fitted in what that someone showed me, a father showed me, was he and his children sleeping on the floor on the road. That there's a road between the entrance to the clinic and your clinic, just sleeping there in the evening because that as soon as the fight started, he just went. You know, you saw a family at the beginning who were camped right on the edge, close. They said they'd moved because of violence, but they were also camped right next to the edge of the of Moria, because when that stabbing happened and I wasn't allowed back in, they were able to get out really quickly, and I saw them at the gates when we were running around trying to find out what was going on. The reason I wasn't allowed back in, I probably wouldn't have been allowed back in anyway because there were riot police in there. Obviously I was going to try, but our time was up. We had an allotted time and it happened after. We had an early slot before lunch queues would build up. And so it was when we just left, gone into the olive grove and sort of walked back around, and then it happened.
Yeah, 45 minutes. Did that strike you as odd? Seems pretty strange to be given 45 minutes in a sort of European country, that kind of restriction on the media? Is that unusual?
Do you know what? You know, I want to say, I'm shocked that they didn't let us in, but actually I'm not shocked. You know, I work in the UK most of the time. We have immigration detention centres in the UK. We're the only country in Europe that doesn't have a time limit on how long people are there. So some people have been there years on end, and we're not allowed to film in them at all. I interview people on the phone inside, and I've been in as a visitor because I knew someone who knew someone, and I could just go in as a visitor, but I couldn't film. You can only secretly film. So to be absolutely honest, I wasn't surprised that we were only given a certain amount of time. We were going to go and do that report, whether we had access or not, and we applied. And in fairness to the authorities who granted us permission, they instantly said yes, and they let us change the day we were going in 4 times. They had very good, they had a very good reason to say you can't come in at all. So, frankly, given how difficult I'd been told it was to get in, I was like, I'll take 45 minutes, I'll take 10 minutes. And we pushed it. We obviously didn't, when 45 minutes was up, say, okay, bye, we'll walk out now. We just stayed as long as we could, so we probably got 2 hours in the end. But it was just after we left that stuff happened.
Mardjan, what's it been like for you and your MSF colleagues to work with, I mean, not with the Greek authority, but literally the Greek officials who are actually literally there, like George in this film? What have the working relationships been like with them?
Pooh, sensitive subject. No, but look, I think it is a European problem on the shoulders of Greece. And it's obvious that Europe, Greece, that the public system is failing for whatever reason. It's not enough. And it goes the collaboration is there, but it goes slowly. We are dependent. We shouldn't be there. It should be done by the Greek government. It should be done, but we're dependent. We have to send patients to the public hospital. We have to send patients to, we are dependent for access. So it's a constant try for smooth collaboration.
Returning a bit to the people who have to live in Moria, Luca of MSF at one stage, I think in the film, says something like, their hopes are being taken away by the system.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, that was in August, and obviously if that is the conclusion about what's going on, then that's just going to get ever worse. Is that what's really happening, or do you still get a sense that there still is some hope amongst the people who have to live there?
To be honest, I think it's only getting worse. It is so clearly institutional failure, and it's a trap. Days are repetitive. People are, as we also saw in the documentary, you get up at 3 in the morning. Someone has to go in the food line for 1 bottle of water. If you, we have a patient, a single mother, every time in the line, she gets a panic attack. So she runs away again, which means her kids miss out on food, and then for lunch, and then for dinner. And you're dependent on everything. For everything, you're dependent on your autonomy is being taken away. Your family structure is being broken up. Everything is taken away. So no,
And what are people saying about their future? I mean, obviously they want to get away, but where do they want to head to? What are they hoping for? All this, despite this.
The short-term goal has become Athens, and Athens has become the epitome of the mainland. Unfortunately, we know that it's cramped there too, and that's the reason why people not move, even when their geographical restriction is lifted. And so I think you see these dreams coming closer and closer and closer. It's not, I don't even hear much more Germany and university, or no, it's just like, I want to go to Athens, which is impossible at the moment either.
Catrin, I'm just wondering, obviously, when we hear about the BBC, we sort of still associate that very much with the vision of journalism that is that of an observer, not a participant. I mean, there's a certain, right? I mean, there's certain independence vis-a-vis your story that you must maintain, a certain detachment. How does that feel, though, when you're confronted with these kinds of situations? I mean, is that even possible?
Impartiality is important to me, really important. But impartiality doesn't mean not being sympathetic. It doesn't mean not comforting someone in distress. And siding with a human being is not taking a side. Do you see what I mean? Everyone you meet. Obviously, this report is an example where that people are in such distress. Of course, you identify with that, and it affects you, and you want to comfort people as much as you can. Like you were saying, walking through Moria, you meet so many people. I mean, you do this every day. I was only there for a couple of hours, like I said. One of the most difficult things was how quickly I needed to move on, because I couldn't miss a bit of the camp. And so you only had a few minutes to try and meet people, speak to them, find out their story, and offer them any comfort you could. And I think impartiality is really important, and what it allows me, I think, is to listen to everyone. This report, I interview controversial figures as well, who some people, one may argue shouldn't be interviewed, or might completely disagree with. There's no one really controversial in this report. But I also think it's important that I listen to them as well. And I think our impartiality as an organisation allows us to do that.
We're coming to a close, and I'm going to do something which we totally did not discuss beforehand, and we didn't prepare, and which sounds maybe slightly corny, but I would actually just like you to sort of perhaps express to the room here, and whoever might be in the online sphere, what's the one thing we should all understand about the situation, we should take away from it, and we should learn from it, so that we are aware if the same kind of treatment of people is happening elsewhere?
Would you like to go first?
Go ahead.
You can go.
Basically awareness of what's happening so close to us, and take position in it, because it will not end, I think, with the situation now in the Middle East, the situation in the countries that people are fleeing from. There's still arrivals, they will come, and we have, and I speak we as Europe, have to take responsibility in this, because this is not working with us here.
I think mine would be slightly linked to what I just said. It's listening to people. And speak to people like me, speak to journalists. If someone hadn't called me and said, you have to go to Moria, I wouldn't have gone. I went because literally someone called me and was like, you need to do something about this. Why don't people know? Why don't people know what's happening here? And so, yeah, reach out to people who you think can let the public know what's going on. And then, I guess, a more broad point that I really believe in, that I think we are struggling with a bit at the moment as humanity, as society, is listen to people and listen to people you disagree with. Because that's really important. Maybe more important than listening to people you agree with.
Okay. Catrin, Mardjan, thank you very, very much for sharing those insights with us. I think that deserves a round of applause. Now we will close with a very short 3-minute video of Ahmed, who's from Raqqa, who's living in Moria at the moment. We filmed that video.
Can I interrupt you quickly?
Yes.
This is terrible, sorry. I just wanted to add something that I meant to say. I can't believe I just interrupted you. It's because you said you were about to hear from someone. I just wanted to say that Ali, who was at the end of that report, was moved off the island 2 days after, and moved to Athens, which is where everyone wants to go. And so it's one person, but there's a little bit of hope after that, because I feel like it's obviously when you watch it, it feels so difficult, and the situation is so bad there. But he was moved. For that. And
I think, to be fair, also, I mean, we went also to Pikpa, and it is a totally different place. So that small camp, where you do the interview at the end of your report, it's a totally different place. It actually shows you how you can look after people humanely without having a huge amount of money. I mean, these are more or less self-organized volunteers from Greece, from Lesbos themselves. They don't have huge funding, and they do manage to put together a very humane system. So that the hope is also there. It's even there on Lesbos. And I think also when we were hearing from Ahmed this video, which I wanted to tell you about, which is something we filmed for a campaign MSF has just been launching in Germany, and it's so I can't translate it. It's called Deine Zeit für Menschlichkeit. It's basically asking you, the public, to donate some time. And spend that time to watch the video recordings, the video interviews of these stories that we have. There's some more information outside. So we're not specifically looking for financial support, even though that's welcome, obviously. But in this case, we're really just looking for focus and attention and awareness, what you were just saying. Before we switch on that video, I just will have to, though, tell you about a couple of things that happen afterwards. So the reception is going to take place downstairs on the ground floor straight away after this ends until 7:30. And I must ask you to really please make your way downstairs fairly quickly, because there's actually another event that's going to happen here, and they will have to set up. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there is a serious reason to ask you to really try and vacate the room fairly quickly. Obviously, also because that's, you will get more quickly to the nibbles and the drinks, which can also be purchased downstairs. And then I'm looking, have I forgotten anything? I don't think so. So please. I think we have the video of Ahmed, and thank you very much again.
أنا بالنسبة لي إنسان. أنا أشوف حالي إنه أنا إنساني لأبعد الحدود. أنا أشوف إنه أنتم إنسانيين لأبعد الحدود. فأنا لما بدي أقول إنه ما في إنسانية، أكيد أنا عم أظلم نفسي وأظلم أي حدا جيد أو أي حدا قدم لي مساعدة بيوم من الأيام. أنا اسمي أحمد خميس. أنا من سوريا، من محافظة اسمها الرقة. محافظة تقريبا هي في شمال سوريا. أنا سايكولوجيست. عشنا نحن كعاملين، كناس تشتغل بهذا المجال، وخصوصا بمجال الصحة النفسية، عشنا تحت الضغط. احنا نحاول أن نتعاطف مع هذول الناس اللي هم بحاجة مساعدة. نحاول إنه نكون قدر استطاعتنا نحن ناس متماسكين أمامهم، لكن بنفس الوقت نحن عايشين هاي المعاناة، بنفس الوقت نحن عايشين قلق إنه نحن مستهدفين. يعني نحن لما كنا نطلع الصبح من بيوتنا ما كنا نتخيل إنه نرجع، فتركنا تحت الضغط وطلعت على حلب. طبعا نحن ما طلعنا إلا بعد يعني تهديدات. يعني أصعب شيء إنك أنت تنشال من محل المكان اللي ولدت فيه، اللي كبرت فيه، اللي خلقت فيه، لتشيل حالك وتطلع على مكان ثاني حتى لو كان ضمن بلدك. تغامر وتطلع بأولادك وتشيل أهلك كلهم تحطهم بقارب صغير، أو هو قارب يعني أنت نفخته وطلعت فيه، تقطع فيه 10 أو 15 أو 20 كيلومتر بالمي. طبعا الشعور ما ممكن ينوصف، ولحظات يمكن نحن ضلينا بالبحر تقريبا شيء 5 ساعات ما ممكن تنتسى على الإطلاق. طبعا أكيد بحياة كل حدا منا في نقاط قوة أو محطات، هي المحطات تخليه يكفي للمحطة اللي بعدها. أنا بالدرجة الأولى أولادي، فأكيد في ناس ساعدوني، وأكيد في ناس وقفوا معي، وأكيد في ناس يعني زوجتي، أمي، طبعا أهلي، مثل الناس يعني أنا جاي مشانهم، وهن بنفس الوقت نقطة القوة لإلي. يعني أنت بلحظة من اللحظات تكون بحاجة بس حدا يسمعك، أو حدا يعني تحس بأنه حدا واقف جنبك، مو شرط يقدم لك شيء معنى أو شيء مادي ملموس، مجرد أنه هو واقف جنبك أنت تحس أنه أنت جدا مرتاح. الإنسان أنا أشوفها جدا ناصعة، أشوفها جدا جميلة. هي الإنسانية اللي نحن فخورين فيها، هي الإنسانية اللي نحن لولاها أكيد ما أحسن نكفي.
Thank you.